2 years ago, Susan and I bought this van, and the very first video I made was how much does it weigh? So we took the empty cargo van that we just bought, I took it down to the local truck stop, and I put it on the scales. So now that the conversion is complete, the question is obviously, how much does it weigh now? Well, in this video, we're gonna find out. The first thing I have to do is fill the water tanks. So I have 68 gallons on board. That's 34 gallons on this side and 34 gallons on this side. I have the weight evenly distributed on the rear axle because both of these tanks are over the wheel well type of tanks. So I've got my fill here, which is conveniently located in the shower in the event I have any spills. And I'm going to go ahead and turn that on and get this filled up. So the two water tanks are part of one system. They are connected by a 1/2-inch PEX, and as a result of that, it takes a long time to fill. So this tank will fill relatively quickly, while this tank takes a little bit to catch up. So I have to stop it, let this one catch up, fill it, keep going around like that until everything is full. But it's worth it. While we wait for the water to equalize, I thought I'd go over some numbers with you. But before I get into that, I do want to talk a little bit about my philosophy for equal distribution of weight in a van. Some of you may know, most of you don't. I was an over-the-road truck driver for several years way back in my youth, and that was a long time ago. And yes, that is my hair. One of the principles that gets driven into you, pun intended, is that you must have an equally distributed load while you're driving down the road. Otherwise, you're going to run into issues. Issues could be instability while driving, instability while turning, early wear and tear on certain parts of the steering or suspension, tires wearing unevenly. Having an equally distributed load is critically important. So my build philosophy was to have as much of a balance left and right as I possibly could, and to put the bulk of the weight on the rear axle. One of the things that bothers me about traditional van building is that people will often put a water tank on one side and the batteries on the other. And when the water tank is full, great. You have fairly equitable distribution of weight. What about when you use the water? So that's a variable amount now that will have different weights as you're using the water. And then you have the batteries, which is a constant weight. So most of the time while you're driving, you will have an imbalance of weight. And I understand that most people put 25, 28 gallons of water in a van. So maybe that's not such a big deal. But I wanted to maximize the amount of water that we carried for many reasons I won't get into. But in order to do that, the only way I could wrap my mind around adding 68 gallons of water was to have an equal distribution. So 34 gallons that side, 34 gallons that side, interconnected between. So now that's a constant weight. Whatever the weight is on one side is the weight on the other for the water. Batteries are a constant weight. They're here on the driver's side. So that meant I had to try to balance out the battery weight now, which is approximately, I'm going to say 400 pounds for the batteries and electrical system. The strategy there was to add about 400 pounds worth of stuff to the passenger side. So on the passenger side, we have things like the awning, 100 pounds, the running boards, 50, 60 pounds, refrigerator and microwave. And this is where all the storage goes on this side here. So we have floor to ceiling cabinets right next to where you are. And on the driver's side, I try to keep it as open as possible. So seating, kitchen with a countertop. The cabinets below are primarily the water tank, so no additional or not too much additional storage will be happening under there. You've got the upper cabinets, which are primarily for, standard kitchen items, plates, cups, glasses, you name it. But the cupboards on the passenger side are intended for heavier items. So once you fill the refrigerator with food and you put the heavier pantry items and clothing and other camping gear on this side, it's pretty darn close to being. So I'm showing a spreadsheet on the screen now, and this is my high-level approximation of the passenger and driver side weights. So the driver side is approximately 974 pounds, and the passenger side is approximately 888 pounds. That is a difference of 86 pounds. Again, that's approximate, and that's without loading the refrigerator or the cupboards or the large drawer, with items. Right? So currently they're all empty, and once populated, I expect that 86 pounds to be, closer to 20, 30 pounds difference, and that really is not a big deal. Then I figured out how much weight I added to, basically I'm going to call it the center of the van. That would be things like the bed, the floor, the ceiling, cabling, other things that are pretty much equally distributed across passenger and driver side, or close enough anyway. That number is 904 pounds. Now, when you add up the passenger, driver, and center weights, that comes to 2,766 pounds of weight that I added for the build. To understand the significance of that number, and again, that's anticipated, I have not weighed the van yet, I'm expecting the total weight of the van with a full fuel tank and the weight that I added to come in right around 8,000 pounds. And what does that mean in the grand scheme of things? Well, let's go back to that first video I made 2 years ago. The gross vehicular weight rating of this van is 9,350 pounds. So that means the van with a full fuel tank and cargo can come in at that weight of 9,350 pounds and be legal. It means the steering, suspension, tires, brakes are all rated to be able to handle that amount of weight safely. When we weighed the van, it came in at 5,260 pounds total. So against the GVWR, that meant that we had 4,090 pounds worth of weight that we could add to the van safely. And if we added the 2,766 pounds to the 5,260, that comes to around 8,000 pounds, give or take. And if that's right, that means we have about 1,300 pounds to spare. That would be Susan, myself, our dogs, loading the refrigerator, loading our gear, items in the pantry, extra things that we're going to take with us. And I know I've put on a couple pounds. I think we're going to be safely under that GVWR for this build on this vehicle. But we're not going to know until we find out. So let's get that water filled up and get down to the truck stop. And just like before, I exited the vehicle before getting it weighed, so this is just the weight of the van. Well, all right, the verdict is in. Our current weight with full gas tank, full water, empty gray tank, some items in the upper cupboards, other cupboards pretty much bare, 8,860 pounds. That is just about 500 pounds shy of GVWR. So when you factor in Susan, myself, the two dogs, food, clothing, gear, yeah, we're there. We're at maximum weight. So the good news is it's temporary, because as we drive, you lose fuel, you lose weight. As we use water, you lose weight. So at the beginning of the trip, literally the absolute beginning of the trip, we're going to be right towards max weight. But for the rest of the trip, we're going to be comfortably under the maximum weight. And again, remember, you're allowed to have the full maximum weight of the vehicle. I'm a little in shock still that I am 800 pounds-ish over what I could have even envisioned it being. But that goes to show you, just when you think it's going to be one number, why don't you add 10% to that? Because that's what ours ended up being, about 10% over. And those are all the things you just don't think about. For instance, I put 17 tubes worth of adhesive in this van. We probably have 600 fasteners in this van, normal screws as well as bolts, as well as the extruded aluminum nuts and bolts. The wiring is probably heavier than I thought. It just adds up. So that's where we're at. We're at pretty close to maximum when you consider the occupants and the gear, but that's still safe and that's still legal. So that's what we're going with. All right, see you next time.